Hello again, Struck Club. It is already time to start making some ready for launch builds Theorycrafts, such as the one I'm presenting to you now, version 2.0 of my Reaping Army Necromancer. Diablo 4 is launching so soon, and we already have plenty of information, be it from the beta or from leaks, regarding skills, regarding the Book of the Dead, regarding the items such as legendary items, the unique items such as gear rows, such as the Paragon Boards, the sockets, the gems. So all the way from the beginning until the end, this setup and the other ones that I'm making, such as ready for launch setups, should be good. Whether you've just started the end game, whether you haven't even reached the end game, still doing the story, or whether you are close to level 100 or even already level 100, this build should have you covered. It is, as the name suggests, Army of the Dead minion-centric build. And I'm actually taking all the possible minions I can think of. Skeleton, both the warriors and the mages, and a golem. But I understand some people might want that extra skill slot on their skill bar, and they might want to sacrifice the golem. That's why you might see later why I've made some decisions in the Paragon board section. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Buckle up and let's go. In Diablo 4, the skills are the starting point of a setup. You pick the skills as the playstyle you wanna chase, and then you try to find items that synergize with those skills, that boost those skills or change their behavior one way or another. And with this one, I've decided. Normally, I didn't like Decompose in the beta, but I decided, okay, let's make this still a Decompose build as the original Reaping Army setup because of the Aquates Decompose. Maybe it will be fun when you stack up all the minion bonuses and you have that auto damage from the minions and you're just supporting them by decomposing and by unleashing corpse explosions for damage over time. And Sever. Sever is um, Sever and Corpse Explosion would be where the damage comes from. Decompose more for utility to get essence if we are out of essence. But if you feel like you don't want Decompose, you can remove it and play without a basic skill. I've tried Necromancers without a basic skill. With the way I've set up this build, it should work. It worked in the beta. And once you have enough corpses, you can keep getting mana by consuming those corpses. And they did say that they made changes to minions, so they die more often, so you're consuming corpses more often. But Corpse Explosion can consume as much corpses as there are nearby. Even though I'm not using the Corpse Explosion build around me items, the way it's done right now, you can still spam it because it doesn't have cooldown. And it will be fine. You're leaving those damage over time skills with Corpse Explosion, the blighted version. We're maxing out Corpse Explosion and Sever. Enhance Sever, Supernatural Sever with the minion bonuses. I'm taking 3 points into Green Harvest, fueled by that, skipping Spiked Armor. But Thorns might be good later on, so consider that you might put some points into Thorns. As you can see, I've put 56 points. And there will be at least 58 points because we have enough points from Renown to make the points 58 from all areas. I've seen leaks, and each area gives you 2 Paragon points. So, except Hell and some other areas that are not a proper act area. But yes, even though the build calculator, Watrix build calculator, which you'll see later in the Paragon segment, um, doesn't allow me to go over 56 skill points, I'm very positive that the game will. Okay, we didn't take corruption or summoning skills because minions, the skeleton takes a slot on our skill bar, and so does the golem. So I needed to empty up that. But we did take some passive. Skeleton Mage Mastery maxed out. And we took over here, we took the Reaper's Pursuit, very good skill. Then Gloom, very nice. I didn't take Crippling Darkness to have points for other things. But you could consider with the remaining points maybe putting stuff in here, at least one. least 1 point to have that interruption stun. And then we have Terror. This build doesn't do much slowing, stunning, or immobilizing. But nevertheless, it is still you could still benefit from damage to stun, immobilized and stuff. You could, in theory, you could swap out certain things to make slowing happen more often. But if you think that terror is not that needed, that's also fine. That is also fine. But keep in mind, these bonuses stack and apply to shadow damage dealt by your minions. So darkness Q do more damage to Sword, and extra more to stunned or immobilized. And you can stack those for up to 18%. And they apply to shadow damage dealt by minions. And we are selecting the shadow minions. But this, I should probably put it like that for something that might not really work unless you can get the stunning, swallowing, etc. And this is also something that you might not always want. This one, I suggest putting those points here, and if possible, with the extra spare points, max it out. I suggest putting 3 points here. It will help you with survivability. If you think, okay, I'm fine, I don't need it, then remove those points, put them elsewhere. Army of the Dead obviously maxed out with the other bonuses, and bonded in essence 3 points. And something that you need to keep in mind about inspiring leader is that build calculators and stuff seem to show it that a point in death defense is needed for this. So we are putting 3 points here, we're putting 3 points here, and we're putting 3 points here, as well as 3 points into Hellbent Commander, which requires inspiring a leader. We are not putting points into this or this, obviously. And Kaon's Edict is nice, and also Golem Mastery. Golem Mastery, it is okay. If you sacrifice the Golem, obviously you can save some points. And speaking of sacrificing the Golem, I do advise taking all minions for this build, and having as many of them as possible, because there are certain things like Sever and other ones you would see later that benefits from as many minions we can have as possible. You could get 7 minions, no problem, without a golem for Kalan's Edict and for other things that require 7. But I took Skeletal Skirmishers upgrade 1, Shadow Mages upgrade 2, Bone Golem upgrade 2, or if you want to sacrifice it, Iron Golem sacrifice. Why? Well, we get extra minion here, and this boosts certain things. That's why upgrade 1. On that Skeletal Skirmisher. If you don't want Skeletal Skirmisher upgrade 1, then consider Skeletal Reapers upgrade 2 for extra corpses, or upgrade 1. They won't be a bad choice either. Shadow Mages with upgrade 2, I really like that in the beta and I think it works greatly. And this one, first this guy taunts, second this guy gives him more life, and it also inherits, lets him inherit more thorns from us. Which again, maybe later in the game, thorns builds would be pretty solid to consider. Next up, let's quickly mention the unique item I've selected for this build. Ring of Mendel is a unique ring for Necromancer only, and it gives you cold resistance and shadow resistance built in. Affixes, keep in mind, you can only have one unique item at the same time equipped. That's why I say item rather than items. And this one here gives you, while you have 7 or more minions, you gain a lucky hit, up to 10% chance to empower all of your minions, causing the next attack from each to explode for an physical damage. This gives you extra increased lucky hit chance, between 4 and 10%. So this will be between 14 and 20% chance, if you exclude other lucky hit chance bonuses. Obviously, more lucky hit chance for this build will be great. More about that in the stats segment. Minion attack speed, pretty solid. Maximum minion life, pretty solid. And it again gives you thorns. So again, there is this option here to try and make this into a thorns necro build, with all the things, good things that could give us thorns. Um, so I think there isn't that much more to say. There were a few other unique items worth considering, but overall, I thought this one fits best in the army power fantasy, in the minion master power fantasy. And now we're at the legendary aspect segment, and again, I've kind of changed the way I present this. Before, I would put recommended here and write the recommended thing for each slot here. And I would, in this section here, I would include every single aspect that I think would work well. But I think instead of overwhelming with information, let's just present you what I think, in my opinion, would be the my personal choice of best in slot. We have a viscous aspect and a blood getters aspect in the helmet and the chest, which are maximum skeletal mages, maximum skeletal warriors increased by 2. Where you put it doesn't matter which one goes where, as long as you have both of those for extra 2 mages and extra 2 warriors, skeletal warriors. Another one that we have, the defensive one, which I'd obviously recommend in the pens because pens can only have defensive, would be while you have 7 or more minions, your minions gain 15 to 20% increased damage reduction, which is pretty solid from all the defensive ones. I think this works well. And again, this 7 or more minions showing itself for the third time already. Another utility that I really like is exploiters aspect. I think it's an amazing aspect for many builds. So mostly not for the crowd control duration, but for the multiplicative increased damage to unstoppable enemies and bosses, elites, mini bosses. They will have unstoppable throughout a big chunk of the fight, unless you have shit tons of crowd control. For example, for that code skeletal mages could help, but this build is all about shadow and using the shadow mages. Um, but I really think this is a good item. Now, we have stuff like cadaverous aspect. I put it in the gloves. Other than the amulet, um, or this ring to SWAT, you can put whichever offensive, whichever place you like. Just suggesting them powers to be in the amulet. Just a moment. Let's finish about cadaverous. Cadaverous, when consuming a corpse, increases the damage of your next core skill, which is Sever, by 5 to 10 multiplicative up to 25 to 50% multiplicative damage. So you can consume a bunch of corpses, boost your next cast of Sever. And then there is something that works well by boosting Sever, which is Empowering Creeper, which brings me to the amulet. So Empowering Creeper gives you each target hit along Sever's path increases the site's damage by 10 to 20% up to 60 to 100. And in the amulet SWAT, this is getting 50% boost. So this from 60 to 100 becomes to 90 to 150. So minimum 90%, maximum 150. Minimum 15%, maximum 30% per enemy hit, per target hit, which would be super good. You'll be getting very good results with this when you combine it with cadaverous aspect, and Sever will be doing some solid chunks of damage if you play your cards right. Then we have stuff like Aspect of Frenzied Death, Unyielding Commander, and Rotting Aspect. Let's go through those. It doesn't matter which place you put them, as long as you leave Ring 2 for reanimation, because reanimation later will get this removed from the build and be replaced with the unique item. So Frenzied Death, as you can see, nothing too fancy. Where did I put it? This one. Each time one of your summoning minions damages an enemy, they get attack speed additive for 3 seconds up to 30 to 42%, which is pretty solid. It will stack with this attack speed here, which is also additive, and it will stack with our Reaping Army attack speed. And in general, I think attack speed for this build would be incredibly important, especially if you're considering this wacky hit. The more often you hit, the more often you have chances to proc and trigger. So attack speed, I didn't want. First, I was thinking of putting the attack speed here and losing it, but I'd rather lose reanimation. Now we're going into rotting aspect. Decompose can chain up to 2 additional targets. When decompose spawns a corpse, it has a 30 to 60% chance to spawn a corpse under all afflicted targets. I think this is great. It will help when you're doing acolytes. The the upgrade for decompose that makes enemies take more damage from the minions. This is another possible thing to sacrifice. If you really like reanimation, which is skeletons gain increased damage while alive, up to 20-30% after 10 seconds, but since the developers confirm the skeletons and minions in general will die more often, this might not be as great unless they reduce the timer too much, to like maybe 5-6 seconds. So this one, again, I put reanimation there because it's something that we need to see if it was adjusted too much, how easy it would be to get skeletons to survive. So decompose is another option to maybe put in this ring until the unique goes if you really like this reanimation to stay forever in the build. And that pretty much is it, other than unyielding commander, which while Army of the Dead is active, your minions gain attack speed, again, more attack speed, and they take 90% reduced damage. Other than that, the build is solid, complete, and rotting aspect is the aspect you could sacrifice if you want to go two-handed. Or you could even sacrifice something else. Um, you could again, you could sacrifice the animation and keep the rotting here. If you want to go two-handed, by all means, you could go two-handed. So rotting aspect and reanimation are the two that are not set in stone, in my opinion. The rest, I think, you should keep as it is. Let's quickly mention the socket types I think would work well with this setup. First of all, the obvious choice would be Amethyst Diamond. Amethyst on the weapon is great. Diamond is also great. But I think Amethyst on the weapon would be better because you won't have to worry too much about shortening the cooldown of the ultimate as much. And damage over time with corpse explosion, the way it's set up, it will work nicely. And there are a lot of things in the paragons that I took that give you bonuses to enemies affected by shadow damage over time and bonuses to shadow damage and stuff like that, which also increases the minion's shadow damage. So this shadow weapon damage over time will be pretty solid. In fact, it's not just shadow damage over time. This boosts all types of damage over time. Now, for the armor, there are various things you can take, including Thorns. If Thorns ends up becoming strong, you might want to consider all armor with Thorns. Alternatively, damage over time reduction, or there's a few other things you could take. Better generation, obviously, you would want to avoid for this setup, but healing received, not so bad. But I still think this one or the Thorns would be good to try. Obviously, there's other ones that you can put in armor if you want them. It's not set in stone, but keep that in mind. Thorns is a possible good choice. Most likely, it would work well at higher levels. It didn't work that well in the beta because there were a lot of pieces missing. So resistance to all elements is my preferred jewelry. But if you need to patch a certain resistance, let's say you have enough of all the other resistances, but you need poison or you need fire, obviously put the one that's needed. If you have plenty of resistances, then you can put armor. Life on kill is also a good option for the weapon if you really need it, but again, obviously damage over time, since we have so much shadow damage over time, would be the best option in my opinion. This brings us to gear rows. They are not in order of priority, but I did put the high priority ones at the top. But in between those high priority ones that are with white names, I cannot tell you which one is the most highest priority. I would say crit strike chance, crit strike damage bonuses are nice. Damage with core skills and crit strike damage with core skills definitely nice. This one shouldn't be here. It's not for here. So shadow damage, critical strike damage with shadow damage increase, resistance to all elements, cooldown reduction, crit strike chance with shadow damage, damage to elites, shadow damage to elites, damage upon killing an elite, crit strike chance with shadow damage against elites, damage reduction after killing an elite, damage for X seconds after killing an elite, damage reduction from elites, minion damage, damage to enemies affected by shadow damage over time, minion resistance to all elements, minion attack speed, maximum minion life, and there's some other ones. I will leave those for a few seconds on the screen so you can see them. Obviously, lucky hit chance, you might want to promote it as a high priority. It would work well with this setup, so I'll just leave it with white name and maybe just move it. Maybe just move it over here. But overall, I think that's the important things to keep in mind when it comes to stats. Hopefully, you saw everything. Hopefully, it is clear. And it's not confusing to all of you out there. Now for the Paragon boards, I will be using the calculator of a person called Wotrick. I used his Tiny Tina's Wonderlands build calculators and I was impressed, and I'm also impressed with what he's done with this one. So as you can see, there's he actually included a database, and there's 272 attributes, even more. Maybe that's not all of them, but that's why, again, those stats I showed you earlier, they came from here. But let's go and show you the setups. I made two setups. This is a level 99 version of the Necro, where the final Paragon board doesn't have much invested into it. Just until then, and then with this setup, now we see the difference. There's a lot of other stuff that I've taken here. Let's go one by one with the Paragon boards. I also included the skills and the Book of the Dead here, if it's easier for you. Links will be on my spreadsheet on my website, so keep that in mind. First, we're taking obviously the starting one. I'm going for the resistances rather than the damage and life. And over here, something to keep in mind is I didn't go for getting 25 willpower. You will need one more willpower node. So if you really want that one for that, whenever your minions deal damage to an enemy, that enemy reduce damage up to 10% for 5 seconds. If you really think it's very needed, you could take more willpower. So this willpower here is not really needed because it's not gonna get you much far, but you could have it just in case, and then you would have to spend 2 points to get this one. And once you get this one together with this, you will have 25 plus. Otherwise, you have 24, and it's not enough. Here we're taking damage and intelligence, damage, willpower, damage. Again, if you think you don't need the willpower nodes, you can remove this one and that one, but this one is needed to take the damage. I think it's good to take them that way, because willpower will be needed for other things later on. And now you're moving over here, and here those willpower nodes we didn't take. So if you think, okay, let's remove that one, let's go here, that also works. It is an option which I didn't include in the other setup. But again, if you would rather have this one and then take the other one, that's it. So here we're taking minion damage. We're not taking the willpower. We're taking minion damage and intelligence. What we're taking here is intelligence, damage reduction for your minions, and more of that. Damage reduction for your minions. We're not taking the dex. This one requires 40 intelligence purchased within range. So there's 10, there's 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. That means we're getting both bonuses. The 192%, up to 192%, that's at rank 20. Bonus to their minion damage and damage reduction modifiers. So any minion damage and damage reduction modifiers we take here are getting 192% when we max out the glyph to rank 20. And we also get that whenever the minions deal damage to an enemy, that enemy takes increased damage from you and your minions up to 12% multiplicative for 10 seconds. Now we're moving on the way, taking Puppeteer for more minion damage, minion attack speed. I think they're very important stats. And all the way up here to your minions deal 10% increased damage for each minion type you have, which is 3 minion types, so up to 30% multiplicative increased damage. Skeletal Warrior, Skeletal Mage, Golem. That's why you could lose the Golem and you lose 10%, but it's okay, it's negligible if you don't want the Golem. Skeletal Mage damage, resistance to all elements and more damage. Skeletal Mage damage and more skeletal resistance to all elements, and if you meet the requirement, you can get even more skeleton mage damage. And we are exiting here. And now there is something I want you to remember. It's extremely important. This board here, board number 3 in the setup that I've taken. This board, you start with that. So you have to rotate it in this way. And once you reach this point, then you rotate it to connect through that point. So you start from here. You take this one and that one here, and then move on down. But since this build, the calculator doesn't allow me to attach through here, I decided, okay, let's mention it. So you start from this side, and then you exit from that side. And once you have this exit ready, that's when you rotate it that way so you can go upwards. And now you start from this side over here. But let's first mention what is in this node. This one is the consuming 5 corpses grants you increased damage for 6 seconds. It's very easy with this setup to do it. And here we have Glyph Socket Mage, rank 20. For every 5 intelligence purchased within range, skeleton mages deal increased damage. And we have enough intelligence. We have 20 with those two, 25. 30, 35. This bonus here requires 40 intelligence, and for that one you can just put a single point over here for intelligence, or over there, wherever, if you feel like you want resistance to all elements from the mages. I didn't take it, but 25% resistance to all elements to the mages might be necessary in later difficulties of the game. Damage to elites here, resistance to all elements. I've taken 2 resistance to all elements. I didn't take the third one. If you need it, you can take it later. But I did take the 3 damage to all elites here. Then moving on the way to the exit, damage to injured enemies and critical strike damage, and 2 more crit strike damage and 3 more damage to injured enemies. And if you have enough dex, you can get even more of that damage to injured. And now over there we are moving on to this one, to Wither. Wither is very good. Your shadow damage over time effects have 5% chance multiplicative to deal 50% multiplicative bonus damage each time they deal damage, which is amazing. This chance is increased by 1%, multiplicative and bonus damage is increased by 2.5 for each 50 willpower you have. So again, taking a lot of willpower from various places will work very greatly for this setup. That's why I try to take some willpower stuff on the way. I try to go through here rather than through there. I thought it would be the better choice. But if you go through here, you're actually taking this damage reduction from enemies that are taking shadow damage over time. Instead of taking this intelligence. You still get the dex and willpower, and you get even 1 more willpower. But I think it's the less investment here, because you can just branch out easily from that side. So you're taking this damage reduction, you're taking this shadow resistance and damage reduction and going for Wither. Then you're moving over here for shadow damage over time and shadow damage, and taking those 2 shadow damages and 2 overtime, skipping this overtime 1. And then you're moving over here, taking this abyssal socket. I mean, I put abyssal in this socket, which is you and your minions deal 10% increased non-physical damage if you have 25 dex in radius. If you don't get it, you only get Paragon nodes within range gain 192 bonus to their non-physical damage and damage reduction modifiers. We have shadow damage, which is non-physical, and we have shadow resistance, which is, I guess, shadow. It's non-physical damage reduction, and stuff like that. So we are boosting those shadow bonuses. If the resistance doesn't get boosted and just the damage, it's still good enough to consider putting this in this slot. For the dex, we have dex here and here, which is 14, and this one is another 10. So 24, and with this one we are at 29, so we should have the 25 dex this way. I've done it. Now you're going down here to take damage to taking shadow damage over time enemies, so enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time, and damage to elites. Taking the other 2 damage to elites and just those 2 on the way, skipping that one. Moving up, and this is our final board, which is Scent of Death. I could have put the golem, but I wanted to leave it viable for people who are going to sacrifice the golem. And so instead of confusing you and putting the golem, hooking monstrosity, golem damage bonuses, Paragon board, again, you could put this one and use it. I decided to put this one in the setup where with at least 2 corpses nearby, you get damage reduction. With no corpses, you get increased damage. And you're going for the crit strike damage and damage to healthy enemies and more crit strike damage on the way. And eventually, after this, you would, this is at 99 level Necro, you would end up feeling in this way, where you're going here for this one. And this gives you, for every 5 willpower purchased within range, you deal 9.6% increased shadow damage over time. And you and your minions get 10% increased damage to enemies affected by shadow damage over time if you have 25 willpower taken. 7 and 7, 14. And 10, that is 24. And we need 25, so I've taken this one, and this is it at 29. So we have those bonuses. We've taken the willpower needed. And now we're moving down here to take damage to injured, damage to injured, damage to injured, and then damage to injured and armor. And if you don't want that damage to injured and armor, you can save 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points and spend them elsewhere. I have also used some filling on the notes below. Here you would see some fillers that I've taken that weren't on this setup. So I think put both of those links here and here. This is the max points. This is the first one. Hopefully this is clear and you understand everything. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end, Struck Web. Keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.